Hello, this is the second part of the Medieval Any Percent tutorial, and I just need to preface this video by telling you to watch part 1 if you haven't watched part 1's content. The inventory glitch, which is what part 1's about, is a major component of what's going to be going on in this video. I also apologise in advance as there is a considerable bit of theory to explain what's going to be going on in this video. At the end of part 1 I stated that there are two uses of the inventory glitch. One use was in entering game events, which I demonstrated through one of the examples. The other use is to get out of bounds. This video is going to be focusing on using the inventory glitch to get out of bounds in what is called level looping. Now, something I should probably have mentioned in the introduction video is that you need to use the analog stick for some of these level loops. You can use older methods which don't use the analog stick, but I strongly advise using the analog stick. The reason why you need analog is that analog has precision, that it allows 360-degree movement, which is required for some of the loops. You know, where D-pad has set movements. It's like north, south, east, west, and it has like up, right, down, right, etc. the diagonals. So that's probably going to be more relevant for people on emulator and the controllers that you use. Just something you need to know, something you have to bear in mind, something you need to know. The loop in this video, though, you can use D-pad or analog. It's personal preference. I use D-pad for all the loops apart from the ones which require analog. You can use analog for them all if you want. It's totally up to you. So what even is level looping? Again, I'm going to break this down like in the previous video. The examples used in part 1 with the inventory glitch were using the inventory glitch to jump past the kill triggers while being in bounds, so being within confines of the level. Those two examples were jumping into areas of the game which have defined bottoms or defined floors, but as I've already mentioned, level loops require jumping out of bounds, so into areas which are not a part of the game world. The goal overall, of any level in Medieval is to beat the level or to make your way to the exit trigger, so you can probably start to see where this is going. The goal of level loops then are to jump out of bounds and to move out of bounds to reach a certain destination. For example, the exit trigger of the level. Now, I say that because not all loops involve you actually reaching the exit trigger. You sometimes just land at different parts of the levels. So, why do we land at different parts of levels? Well, some of the loops are quite difficult, so there are different loops or easier loops which only loop a part of the level. The other thing is sometimes you only loop a part of the level because you require something in the level. Some of the levels, just the way they're designed, you just can't skip the whole level. In the 100 Ruins level, you need to collect the crown so you can actually activate the exit trigger. The exit trigger doesn't actually exist until you lift it. There's other cases as well. This sounds simple in principle, this whole level looping deal, but you'll quickly come to understand how this can become quite complicated. Now, before I touch on how this is done, I want to explain why it's called a level loop. Now, as previously mentioned, in bounds has a floor, and out of bounds is nothing. There is no level. So if you're jumping out of bounds or jumping down a hole in a level, you are falling, and like quote unquote indefinitely, but you're not just falling down in level looping. Naturally, you would assume if you jump into a hole, you're just falling down that hole forever. If this was the case, this glitch would not work, because you would just be under the level forever. If you're under the level, the actual physical level, how can you get to the exit trigger if it's above you? So it's called a loop because after you fall a certain distance, you then appear at the top of the level. So basically, you fall a certain distance down and you reappear at the top, and you fall a distance down, reappear at the top again, continuously. So by appearing at the top of the level, you can then land back in the level, or the exit trigger, or wherever you want to go. Now, I mentioned this is more complicated than meets the eye. If you think simplistically, level looping is just using the inventory glitch to jump past the kill triggers to fall out of bounds and then land on the exit or wherever you want to go. However, I'm going to have to define a few, what I'm going to call the rules of level looping, which define how you use your destination. So, firstly, you can't let your speed reach 0. When you're out of bounds, you always have to be moving. If your speed reaches 0, you die, and you appear back on the ledge where you jumped out of bounds. Now, remember the inventory glitch and example 2 in the previous video. When the inventory is open, you can't move. So you need to close the inventory so you can move around to reach your destination or the exit trigger. So when you've fallen past the kill trigger, you close the inventory and start to move by hitting a direction and holding circle. So you need to actually hold the direction so you don't die, so your speed doesn't hit 0. And you also need to hold circle. If you let go of circle, you die. If you let go of direction, you die. Now the second rule is that you are now vulnerable. So you've closed the inventory, you've passed the kill triggers, you don't have the sort of invulnerability that the inventory grants you anymore. So the inventory needs to be closed so you can move. You can't move while the inventory is open. So yes, you can move around, but eventually you might move into a kill trigger because you're now vulnerable, which obviously kills you, and you appear back on the ledge again where you jumped off. So let's talk more about the movement out of bounds. The movement is not conventional like most games which have out of bounds tricks in them, in that it's not like there's a defined area you're running about through or moving through. You're moving, essentially falling through a black abyss where you can sometimes see Dan, the character, or the game's skybox, and you aren't walking or running through out of bounds. You are literally falling in a direction. Now this immediately becomes a problem. As I said, this is more complicated than meets the eye. If you're falling through nothing, then how do you know where you are? How do you know where to go? You can move about randomly if you wish, but if you hit a kill trigger, you're dead. So how do you know exactly where to go? Well, through trial and error and tassing, i.e. finding the exit trigger's coordinates or pointing the game's coordinates, and then monitoring Dan's location out of bounds, you can find the inputs as to allow you to get to where you want to go. I hope that makes sense. So, to explain that, every level loop I'm going to explain has a certain number of inputs. So a direction button, so for example holding up and circle to move up. These are held for a specific period of time, and we monitor these changes in direction with visual cues, and these are with the two things I mentioned with Dan or the skybox of the game. So, in a nutshell, level looping is using the inventory glitch, closing and reopening the inventory, and in that space of time with closing and reopening, jumping off a point in the level into the out of bounds area. And when you think you are past the kill triggers, you close the inventory and you hold circle and the direction. These directions that you're holding are known to you, as I will explain them, and you will look for visual cues as to when you change direction, or there will be a period of time which I'll specify that you change direction, and that's if you even change direction at all. Some loops only have one direction, they're not too difficult. Some of the loops have a lot of directions, and they're a bit more complicated. So I hope you understand level looping now. I hope you understand sort of the mechanics of how it works. If it's not clear, just ask me in the comments, but it should be reasonably clear, I hope. So I'm actually going to explain the first loop now. So the first loop I'm going to focus on is the Enchanted Earth loop. Now there's technically two loops in this level. They are very similar. One is faster and slightly harder. But before I go into that, I'm just going to speak about the role of this level in the run, or the routing. So, before we even speak about actually speedruns, we're going to speak about this game casually. Casually, you can enter this level early. It has a level within it, in the ant caves, which is not at any percent, so you don't have to worry about that level. So normally, to play this level, you need an item called the Shadow Artifact, which you use to get an item in this level called the Shadow Talisman, which unleashes the Shadow Demons, which are like an enemy type in the game. It's like a plot point in the game, and you use it to fight a boss in this level. They're like two flying demon bosses. But with this loop, you skip needing to lift the Shadow Artifact, you skip the Shadow Talisman, you skip the boss, and you skip unleashing the demons. So since we're actually skipping this level, we don't need to do anything like that. We don't need any of those items, or we don't need to do those events. So it's funny in like a game logic sort of way. It's funny because, you know, we don't unleash the Shadow Demons, but they're in later levels anyway. It's just a funny thing that they just somehow get out. And that also means that in the level where the Shadow Artifact is, you don't need to lift it. It's in the safe in the mayor's house. You don't actually need to open the safe. You need to get the safe key. If you did the level normally, you would need to get the safe key so you can open the gate, but there's a trick in that level which allows you to get to the mayor's house, which you need to get into anyway, so you can get to the end of the level. So in terms of the routing, then, you understand as to how, you know, what you're skipping. But there's actually two choices with this level. Two choices with regards to where it comes in a run. You can do this level early, as you have early access to it, and since you don't need the items, you can complete it early. You can then do Pools of the Ancient Dead, and then you can do the lake, and then you can go back to Scarecrow Fields. Now you need to go back to Scarecrow Fields, and you just can't continue to the end of the game because you need the dragon gems to progress in the game to get the dragon armor. Alternatively, you can do the level later. You can go to the Scarecrow Fields and then do that side of the map. You know, up Pumpkin Gorge and then up to the Asylum and then back and then do Enchanted Earth as you progress to the end of the game because you have the dragon gems, or basically the way that you're intended to play the game. So the first route is actually safer, doing the level early. It's safer because you get a life bottle in Pools of the Ancient Dead. Medieval 90% is a very health management sort of run, and you get better, you can have less life bottles. So that's why the second route, just going to Scarecrow Fields first, exists. Also, Pools of the Ancient Dead is kind of an annoying level. You can fall in the water and die a lot, so maybe you want that out of the way early in the run, as opposed to, doing the right side of the map. Again, Pumpkin Gorge and up to the Asylum, and then getting that level, and then losing all your health, and then the run's over. You can get it out of the way earlier. The same with the lake, you can fall into the water in the lake. It's a short level, but you can still lose health there, so you can get those out of the way. I would actually recommend, if you're learning the game, to do that route, because you have the life bottle, and you get those harder levels out of the way. The second route is just to save time. If you go to Scarecrow Fields first, you don't actually need to use that map movement, so once you beat Enchanted Earth in the first route, you go to Pools of the Ancient Dead, and then you go to the Scarecrow Fields, you go to the lake. And when you beat the lake, you have to go to the lake, Pools of the Ancient Dead, the Enchanted Earth, to the Scarecrow Fields. So that map movement doesn't exist, so you're saving time in that respect. So that's the two routes, and how this level is I guess, the cornerstone of the game, as it defines where you go in the game on the routing. So I'm going to talk about this loop. I'm going to explain the loop before the video plays, because it happens so quickly that it's hard for me to get everything in. As you know, the loop, how you get out of bounds, is using the inventory glitch. You use the inventory glitch to get past the kill triggers, and then you move using movements I'm about to explain to you, or directions I'm about to explain to you, out of bounds while holding circle, and then you will land the extra trigger. So you're going to see, when the video starts, you're going to see me at the start. I just started from the start of the level just to explain where you're going. And when you get to the area, you see me using the inventory glitch. I use the inventory glitch to get past the kill triggers. The visual cue that I have to close the inventory when I'm falling is those chests you'll see with gold in them. I tend to close there. As soon as I close the inventory, I hold right. And I'm going to explain this again when the video's playing, when I'll do like a voiceover, so you know when I'm telling you to change direction. It'll then change again to like Dan is falling, and you hold upright, still by holding circle of course, because you will die if you don't. And then the screen will go black and you hold up. And you keep holding up until you land, and you'll see the gate, and the level just won't end immediately, but you'll land behind the gate, and you'll be in bounds, so you can move about here. You need to jump towards the gate, which is the exit trigger. So, now for the video. So this is the first loop, and just as a note, watch out for those frogs, because they control you. When you see me on the platform up here, they can knock you to the edge of it, and if you touch the edge of the platform and you're moving up, it'll move you, or if you touch the opposite edge, it'll move you down, so you don't want that to happen. Remember, when you're doing this trick, you want to be holding circle and the direction. I'm going to explain the directions now. So I'm going to jump out of bounds, and when I get to the chest, I'm going to close the inventory, and I'm just going to explain the directions here. It's the simplest way. Close, hold right. Upright, because I'm falling. As soon as you see me start to fall, upright. Up. I've disappeared. Hold up. I keep holding up in circle. And I land, and you'll see me jump towards the door, and that's the trick. Again, if this isn't clear, just feel free to ask in the comments. I will happily answer any questions anybody has.